today's session, we look at updating subcategories within our families. Head of the family addresses many issues that commonly occur with families, and today we'll be looking at updating and correcting issues with categories within our families. We've already done an initial scan of all of our families, so we now have the information about those families and what the category settings are. So there are two ways that we can now easily look at what the used categories are. Both of them involve pressing this used button, but in one case we'll have the most used settings button clicked, and in the other we won't have it clicked. In this first run, we'll press the used button with the most used settings button disabled. Once we do that, we'll be prompted to edit existing data or to regenerate and edit the new data. So pressing this one, it'll go off and rescan our report file and generate the current settings within that file. So this file includes all of the information about our categories, and you'll see a number of columns. The first column relates to actually doing part of the updating fixing process. Then we've got family type, subcategory type, and you'll notice here that despite the fact that we were scanning a doors family, we actually have some other family types or categories defined here. So because doors families can in fact have detail items in them, we're presented with subcategories relating to that type of information. We've got dimensions, we've got doors, and because doors are also embedded into walls, we also have walls information. On top of that, we also have RGB values for each of these subcategories. We have projection and cut weights listed, and where a category can't be cut, there won't be a value there. We then have material information. We have some information about whether it's a built-in category or also whether it's a non-ANZUS category. Now the two final columns, count and item count, tell us in how many files or families this particular group of settings actually occur. So in this case we've got 15 families that use these settings for detail items, and there's actually only 4 items that exist using that particular category layer. Now where we've got multiple lines all showing the same value, you'll see that we have different values for either color or for projection and cut weights. So here we're being shown how many files the particular settings occur in. So we've got 9 files, 5 files and 1 file. And of those 9 files, there are 16 elements that use that particular set of category values. We could now go through this file, decide which values are in fact the ones that we want to use, delete the lines that we don't want here. So if we decided that the 9 and 16 line was the set of values that we wanted to use, with the projection weight of 1 and the cut weight of 2, we'd simply go in, delete these lines, save off the file, and once we go back into head of the family, you'll see that here we in fact have the open button showing as red. Now that red indicates that our used file is more up to date than our control file. Therefore, if we ran it in this state, we would in fact be using an old control file. To correct that, we can click on the arrow button, and we'll just say overwrite, and you'll see now that the open button reverts to its normal color. Often a simpler way to generate a categories list is to use the most used settings option. So we'll click on that, click on used again, we'll regenerate and edit the data, and this will result in a file where only the most common sets of settings, the RGB, projection, cut and material values, appear in the file. Therefore, once we change the values on a particular row, if we want to change them, we know that there's only that one entry for that particular subcategory within the file, and all of the files we process will use these settings. So in this case we'll just press save. We'll close the file. Once again our button's turned red. We will transfer that across, overwrite the file so that our control file now has that consistent information, and we can press process all. Once the processing is completed, we'll be presented with a log of what's actually occurred, what's been updated, and whether or not there were any errors. Now, one of the things to note is that sometimes with categories there are certain things that can't be applied. In the current version of Revit, you can't actually set a subcategory material to nothing. The API simply doesn't allow for it. Apparently in later releases, 2014 onwards, this is allowed for. But in this case, we now have the manual edit button showing as enabled. If we click on that, it actually shows us what file, what was the main family, what was the nested family, and what the error was. So it was unable to set the category glass material to nothing. So we can simply click on that, click on open, and we can then correct the issues with that particular file. So to correct that issue, we simply close out of head of the family. We go to Manage, Object Styles, and you'll see here we've got our glass. The material is set to glass. Now, if we'd wanted to change that to another material, that would have all worked fine, and in later versions of Revit this will also work fine. But at the moment we'll need to just go in and set that to no material and then save off the family. There are a couple of other options worth mentioning at this point with our open file or category fixing file. In this first column we've got update and add. So currently we've only been updating categories, so if they exist then update them. We can however set any of these to a value of 1, so let's set this to a value of 1 and we'll change this field, and perhaps we want some unique field or unique category. And we'll give it some values. And we'll get rid of the rest of these lines and just delete those. So what we're specifying is that any files we process that is of the doors category will have a unique category added to it, and it will use these values. So we'll just save this off and close the file. Now, one of the best things to do when creating new sets of rules to be applied is to actually test it on a single file. So we'll just close out of this and we'll open up a door family, and we'll go back into head of the family, and we now have the process current button available to us. So we'll just click on process current. Keep in mind that we're adding a unique category, and so it says creating category doors, unique category. It's doing it also in our nested families, and we'll just click on done, exit out of this, and if we go to manage object styles, you'll now see that we've got a unique category with projection and cut weights of 6 and a color of magenta. Now the other option that we have in head of the family is to actually move items from one layer to another, or one category to another. So if we go back into head of the family, and at this point I'll just click the copy the used file over again. I'll say overwrite, and we'll say open that file and just get rid of some of these items related to detail items and various other families that we're not really interested in this case. Okay, so here at the end we can say move item to, and we're, just as an example, we'll say move items to doors, and we'll do that for all of the items on any of those categories. Will all get moved to the main category. So if we'd wanted to move it all to doors glass, we would have entered doors glass here. Alright, we'll just save that off and close out of this. So we've currently got a family that uses a number of categories and subcategories, and we've defined our control file to move all of those items onto the main category level. So if we go into visibility graphics and we turn off a few of these categories, apply that, you'll see that various items have disappeared. If I turn those back on, doing this off the screen, you'll see that those items come back. So we'll now click on Process Current, and all of the items that are on all of those subcategories will get moved across to another category. So it's done fairly quickly. If we now go out of this, bring up our visibility graphics, if we now click on all, turn them all off, and then turn on just doors, you'll see that all of those items are now on that doors category, whereas previously they were spread through panels and glass and what have you. That concludes this session on head of the family and updating categories. Look forward to the next session on nested families or textiles.